Welcome, Carmen Gonzalez. We're delighted to have you here at Smith. I know that your book, Presumed Incompetent, that you've co-edited with some other individuals, has had a huge impact in academia, I feel like a growing movement, and definitely an impact here for us at the School for Social Work. My own life, my own professional life, I've used it quite a bit. I don't know that other folks know, though, that you are also a legal scholar, or primarily, I guess, a legal scholar in working in environmental and food justice issues. So I wanted to make sure people knew that about you as well. I have a couple of questions for you about this book. And the first is, how did it come about? How did the idea for it come about?
Well, it started with conversations that I was having with my co-editor, Gabriela Gutierrez y Mus, at Seattle University. In our own professional lives, we'd experienced very high levels of bias. We heard stories, we witnessed mind-boggling incidents, and we started wondering, is this anomalous? Is this happening everywhere, or is it just us? When we attended conferences in the hallways, people would talk about these issues. Right. We'd have private conversations. We knew that this was happening in other places, but there wasn't an open discussion of these issues. So we wanted to see, how pervasive is this? And so what we decided to do is we brought two other women on board for this project who had had similar experiences, and we issued a call for papers very broadly in a variety of disciplines, using our networks of our friends and colleagues, to see what would come of this. We were stunned. We were absolutely inundated with responses to the call for papers. It took us months to read them, to get out from under them, to decide which ones to publish. And then in addition to broadly issuing a call for papers, we had also invited particular people that we knew women who had very interesting stories, and asked them to tell it.
Was there trepidation, though? I mean, when I first picked up the book, and I've told you this, flipping even just through the table of contents and looking at the titles, what the content, even that content felt really important to give a voice to. And I also had a little fear in my heart about this being brought to light. I mean, was that conversations that you had?
The conversations we had were fascinating. One of the experiences that we talk about in the introduction is the stories that aren't told in the book. The book is nearly 600 pages long. It's huge, and we rejected so many of the submissions we received. But there were certain women who told us their stories at length in private. Some of them wrote them up and submitted them. And then at the 11th hour, they said, "This is too risky. I can't publish this."
Right.
And so we talk in the introduction about the reasons for the silence, because the silence is part of the story. The fact that it is dangerous to tell these stories is also part of the story. Now, the obvious danger is retaliation.
Yeah.
You're airing the dirty laundry of your home institution, and there are going to be consequences. But it runs deeper than that. We are supposedly in a post-racial world, and there's tremendous pressure that women face to deny the reality of the systemic bias that we experience every day in the workforce. To tell that story is to go contrary, in violation of the dominant myths and narratives about meritocracy. And that carries a price. That's dangerous.
Yeah. Well, I could see not right in your home institution and in your professional circles. And I think what's happened, one of the things that resonated for me was the power of the book was that it took it away from my individual story or your individual story, and here was this collective that I didn't have to give voice to, saying the things that many women of color in academia and other organizations tried to describe their experiences, and that's very powerful. But you do run the risk of getting labeled as difficult or hard to work with.
Uncollegial. And unworthy of tenure and promotion, right? This is the language that academia uses to punish women who tell the truth.
Yeah. Now, given that, this flood of stories, were there any surprises? I mean, was there anything that you didn't expect, or did it all pretty well resonate with your own experiences?
It resonated, but we had expected that there would be a generational difference, that the stories of the more senior women would differ from the stories of the graduate students and the more junior women. And of course, the junior women couldn't write for themselves. It would be a career-ending move. So we have interviews and surveys that were done by social scientists that bring out the voices of the junior women. What is remarkable is how the same patterns keep repeating themselves, that things have not changed. The numbers have increased, but the institutions, the culture of academia still remains very, very hostile to those who are outsiders. And we would have expected some change because critical mass does make a difference in terms of the comfort level that an individual experiences, but the institutions have not changed.
Yeah, I can see that. You know, when you have faculty hires, you're bringing in one or two individuals, and there's ways in which they can be very isolated. And they're trying to get along, and they're trying to be good colleagues, and they're trying to prove to the institution that it wasn't a mistake to hire them. And so they put up and are unsure about what they're experiencing. It's okay to ask questions. And
there's pressure to assimilate. I call it compulsory assimilation. There's a pretense of valuing diversity. Yes, we welcome diversity, but really what they want is to bring in people who will assimilate, who will not rock the boat, who will not truly change the environment.
Yeah.
And that's why you can change the numbers, yet the culture doesn't change.
Yeah. Now, what has been the reaction? As I know you and your colleagues have spoken to many different institutions now. What are you finding? Like, what are institutions administrators open? They're fearful, or what's been the experience?
There's a difference between the faculty response and the institutional response. We have been deluged with invitations to present at different universities because faculty of color, women of color who read this book identify with it so strongly that they want someone to come in and just tell the story. They want their administrators to hear it. They want their colleagues to hear it. At the level of administration, it's mixed. I think there's still a tremendous amount of denial about how serious the situation really is. Again, there's the rhetoric of diversity, but there isn't a real commitment to anti-discrimination and anti-oppression and equity.
I think what gets confusing for folks, and I know that when you're in the position on a faculty where you're trying to convince others there is a problem, some of the reasons others don't see a problem is they're confused of whether it's your problem and your problem, but really how big of a problem is it? How many people are we talking about? And seeing very idiosyncratic patterns with that person's situation. And oftentimes it also coming down to the proof saying, well, that might be that the process was a little off, but in the end it's still about the bar of productivity and the quality of that scholarship and whether or not it is or is not there. And putting that person in a really hard bind again to try to re-explain sort of what's happening to them.
And that's what happens, is that these stories are thought of as individual experiences. And part of the reason we went forward with the book is that we can show through literature reviews, through qualitative surveys by social scientists, and through personal narratives, that the same patterns keep replicating themselves in different departments, in different universities. And at that point you realize this is structural, this isn't individual. And what this means is that it's a tool for someone who's having these experiences to name it. And then figure out ways of addressing it. And in the book, the last chapter in particular sets forth some of the best practices that universities can adopt to address these problems.
Yeah, actually, I want to get to those, definitely. I mean, I think in settings where you and I have worked together, I found have the power of your credibility presenting these patterns to audiences that are at varying levels of believing, that it's really important. I think I held my breath the whole first time I ever heard you present, the whole thing, looking around, darting my eyes around to see what the reaction is, being worried of, I don't know, of some kind of conflict coming back. I mean, do you find that there's pushback like that, or challenging you for, to prove that this wasn't anomalous, this wasn't?
Well, we anticipated some of that. One of the things we realized is that people respond to information in different ways. Some people respond best if they can, if the information is presented in an empirical manner through studies, because the brain is what really captures their imagination. That's what works for them. They want to see the patterns. They want to see that it's 193 women interviewed and this is what they said. So we put that in the book because we know that that's a key way of reaching someone. For others, they may vaguely understand intellectually that there's a problem, but they don't get it at an emotional level. And it's important to get it at an emotional level.
Yeah.
And the personal narratives do that. They pack a punch. They reach people in a way that touches the heart and hopefully enables them, when they see these patterns in their own institutions, to say, this looks vaguely familiar. This isn't just idiosyncratic. So the response for those who have gone to the trouble of reading the book, I think, has generally been very positive. There's so many different paths through which you could understand what's happening.
Well, I think it also has applicability. While it's a very important exploration of what happens in academia, those structures and those processes I really see as being generalizable to any organization. And definitely in social service organizations that, we are talking to our students and each other about, I see those same patterns in the ways that those wind, how structured inequity, structured oppression lives in process, in that way, invisible way that blames the individual.
And we've gotten very positive responses from women who are not in academia, telling us, this tells my story too. I'm not in academia, but I see some of these same patterns.
And what about men? What's been the reaction from men of color?
Well, some men have said, well, what about us? And my response is, yes, many of these patterns are applicable to you as well. So please do your own book. We would have loved to include you, but it's 600 pages as it is. 1,200 pages, we wouldn't have found a publisher. But also, men need to listen to the experiences of women. Intersectionality is important. When you're at the bottom of more than one hierarchy, the quality of your experience is very different.
Yeah.
And so it's important to form alliances with people who understand at least one part of the oppression, one part of the subordination, and also understand that it's different when they're combined.
Yeah.
And those alliances are ultimately the path forward. Without those alliances, we can't change the status quo.
So you had talked about that last chapter, which is just so important, where you lay out, your colleagues laid a range of recommendations. And I guess, what have you observed, what would you say are the top three? I mean, really, what are the ones that, when those things change, really can see change in an organization? Do you have a sense of those?
I would say the most important thing is that it is not enough to simply give lip service to diversity. If you really want to promote the hiring and retention of women of color, specifically faculty of color generally, you have to weave it into the institutional framework. So, for example, it has to be a performance criterion for deans and department chairs. What have your successes been in hiring and retention? Why haven't you done better? It should affect the bottom line. It should affect the salary. So it's not just vague aspirational language. It is part of your job to make sure that this happens. Another factor that has been very useful is when a university has a designated vice president for diversity and inclusion. And that person needs to be a respected member of the faculty, not just an administrator brought on to fulfill that function. That also sends the message that we take this very seriously and that this is going to be interwoven into everything that's done. So I would say those are among the top two. I could go on for 3 hours, about all of them. But it comes from the top. Who is your team?
Yeah.
How diverse is your team? If your team is not diverse, you're sending a message right there to the entire university about what you value and don't value.
Having run faculty searches, I feel like without a clarity of purpose, it can be very confusing as you're trying to sort through, stacks of CVs of very accomplished people, trying to find that fit in terms of their expertise for what you're looking for, both in the classroom and around the intellectual diversity. and getting clarity around how important diversity is, aspects, however that the different aspects of diversity, and as you said, like the intersecting identities, how important that is to bring, and it leads to some really complicated conversations.
And there's another level, and this is yet another important thing that leadership can do. One of the things that happens in faculty searches is implicit bias, unconscious bias taints the process. There's a conscious effort to have a diverse pool, but then as the search narrows, faculty always find something wrong with the faculty of color. Well, maybe their book wasn't picked up by a top publisher, or we didn't like the job talk, or this person wasn't fun at dinner, or something always comes up that derails that person's chances. So one of the things that's hugely important is training faculty on implicit bias, having that be something that is required. In fact, some universities do it with students, to have implicit bias training be mandatory. And that then opens up the possibility of talking openly about this and not being met with questions of, what are you talking about? I don't even understand your vocabulary, much less the meaning of what you've just said.
Yeah. Now, at the School for Social Work here at Smith, we have had for 20 years this anti-racism commitment that's hugely important to our organization, and it threads and structures. So we have mechanisms that encourage us, that build process for us to have those conversations. I can imagine embarking on that's really hard for other organizations. It's
very hard.
That alone is a sea change.
That is huge. But yet without it, how can we even have a conversation?
Yeah. People are too afraid of exposing what they think and being identified as is that their attitudes are problematic or biasing, and then they can retreat into
silence.
Yes.
They retreat into silence.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. We don't know how to have a conversation about race.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Carmen. Your work and this book has been so influential for so many people and organizations. I'm really looking forward to what comes next. I don't know if there's another edition planned.
Well, there are many women who are doing their own books now, and many men. So I'm waiting to see more books come on the market that address this.
Yeah, there's a real a time and a need for voice. So thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks.